Hey guys, before we get started, we wanted to shout out all of our awesome partners, including Hicks Chicks, Gregg Vet, and all of the awesome partners that you see on the screen right now. Make sure to do business with them, and we hope you enjoy the show. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Miss Lou Champion Spotlight. Mr. Tony, let's just dive right in. You grew up right here in Miss Lou, right?
I grew up on 610 North Pearl Street, right down the street
Right
from
down the
here.
street, okay.
So, and grew up there, and actually was born in what people call the Natchez General Hospital, but back then, when I was born, it was called Chamberlain and Rice, named after two doctors. So I grew up on Pearl Street with a whole bunch of people to play ball with. A lot of Catholics in that area, so a lot of kids, of course, obviously. But anyhow, I grew up there and learned to swim at the old Elk swimming pool, which was now the guest house down the street. And went to Carpenter number 1 and then to the Institute, which is where now the Historic Foundation is. And then went to Natchez High, because back then the junior high was in there, so I started there in the 7th grade and graduated from Natchez High in 1954. And so, yeah, I'm very much of a Natchezian. And, you know, when we tell guests that come into town that you're Natchezian, you usually have to say, Gazoon Heider, God bless you after that, because they think you're sneezing.
Where was this hospital at that you...
It's right, the one they just sold at the Natchez General Hospital.
Okay.
Right at the end.
One over by the
right
mounds.
Well, by the towers.
Okay.
Right at the end of Pearl Street.
Oh, okay.
And Oak Street. And Pearl Street, kind of an interesting story. I grew up at 610, and across the street from me was where Mayor Benbrook lived. And Mayor Benbrook was the longest serving mayor we've had. I served 20 years, and everybody thinks that I was, but I'm not. Mr. Benbrook was back in the 1880s, 90s, and 1900s. I don't remember how many years he served, but more than 20 for sure. But anyhow, that was called the Avenue to the Cemetery, and they were going. The Board of Aldermen and the mayor were going to pave the sidewalks for people to be able to get to the cemetery. And I understand they said Mr. Benbrook was so honest that he told the city, "Don't pave my sidewalk until everybody else has theirs paved." Well, Mr. Benbrook died while that was going on. And to this day, there's no sidewalk in front of his house on purpose.
Wow.
And it's the only place on Pearl Street that doesn't have a sidewalk, has grass.
Interesting.
And B Street, which is right there at Pearl, was supposed to be named for Mr. Benbrook, but they didn't name him while they were still alive, anything after anybody that was still alive. So it's called B Street, and there's no sidewalk on B Street either.
Wow, that's interesting.
So growing up in that area was kind of fun, but then I went to Natchez High and enjoyed playing sports at Natchez High.
What sports did you play?
Well, everything they had, I guess.
Anything that let you play.
As you did in those days, but primarily basketball and football. Ironically, Ronnie, I was pretty fast, and I was playing on the varsity and the B team in football when I was a freshman. I weighed about 120 pounds, I guess. But being fast, Coach Rexinger brought me up to the varsity to run back punts and kickoffs and hold for extra points. And the last ball game of the season, I got hit pretty hard, and it caused my leg to hurt a good bit. And got examined at halftime, and Dr. Whittington, who was a very well-known doctor in this area, said at that time, at halftime, he said, "This boy's not going to play football again." And how he knew that, I have no earthly idea. But what happened to me was, got hit, and of course it pulled a muscle or whatever it pulled. It started bleeding, and it ossified. Something that probably today they could take a needle and shoot in there and get rid of. But anyhow, he was pretty close to right. I kept trying to run on it and couldn't run on it. And finally went to an orthopedic in Jackson because we didn't have one here in Natchez. And he got me to sit on a pillow for 2 years. So in high school,
2 years.
high school, I went around with a pillow, well, kind of actually shaped kind of like a toilet seat, and with a pillowcase on it. And of course, people made fun of me.
I'm sure that went over well with the ladies.
Well, I tell you what went well. They were sitting on hard seats, and I had a cushion. But anyhow, he said I could play basketball, but not football. So I went on and kept trying to go out for football, and my legs would give away. I finally got to play my senior year, and we had a very good team my senior year. And in fact, personally set a record in touchdowns. The old record was 30 touchdowns in a season, and thanks to my teammates, I scored 32 and beat a record that was held by Shorty McWilliams out of Meridian in Mississippi State. And but I got to play basketball. But while I was hurt with football, they let me be the manager, one of the managers. So my job was to get the guys out on the field and then go in the gym and shoot for about 2 hours. And so I did that, and so it paid off because...
Got pretty good. Huh?
Well, my senior year in the Big 8 finals when we beat Jackson Central, which at that time was the only white public school, high school in Jackson, we beat the devil out of them in the finals, and I scored 42 points there. So I actually ended up leading what was the Big 8 conference in scoring in football and basketball in 1 year. So
wow.
But I could tell my legs were not going to hold up to that beating, and so after high school, I went to Mississippi State on a basketball scholarship.
And you played how many years at Mississippi State?
I just played 3 years at State. I signed under a coach named Paul Gregory, who was better known as a baseball man. He had been in the big leagues. And then Babe McCarthy came in my sophomore year. And I could tell right away we weren't going to get along, and I'm sure it was all his fault. But he ran a four-corner offense where you just passed the ball around until you could finally get a decent shot, slow down type ball, and that wasn't my style at all. So I was actually going to transfer schools and go to Delta State, where a lot of my friends, Bob Deering, Senator Deering being one of them. But my daddy died the first ball game of my sophomore year. And, it took a while to get the estate settled, so I couldn't just quit playing basketball and go somewhere else. So I went to Coach Darrell Royal, who was coaching at Mississippi State at that time, and later he's in the Football Hall of Fame. He went to Texas and was quite successful, and Coach Royal told me, he said, you've been out of, I told him I might want to start playing football again. He said, well, you've been out about 2 years. He said, you'd have to drop your scholarship and walk on. I said, I'm not that stupid. So I played 3 years and didn't play my senior year.
Okay.
Which actually helped me politically and business-wise by broadening my experience at Mississippi State to other people. I was a Sigma Chi. I am a Sigma Chi. And I saw Curtis Maroney had been on here earlier, so he and his dad both were Sigma Chi's. And enjoyed it, then came back to Natchez when I graduated.
You went on to a tournament whenever you were in Mississippi State to Indiana?
Well, actually, the year before we went to the carousel tournament in the Carolinas, Mr. Belk actually put it on, Belk's department store. And we played against some black ball players, and of course there was complete segregation in Mississippi in those days. But we didn't think anything about it. They were just ball players, so we played against them. And then the next year at Christmas time, we went to Evansville, Indiana, and played in another tournament against some more black ball players. And we were in the finals against Evansville University. And they only had one black ball player. He was about 6'10", and we all ate our pre-meal together. And then Coach McCarthy said, boys, when you get through, come to my room. Don't go walking like you usually do. And we got there, and he said, boys were pulling out of the tournament. And of course, we all rebelled and said, no, we worked hard to get here to the finals. You know, we want to play. He said, well, the legislature found out that you're playing against some black ball players. So you're going to have to pull out and go home. And of course, we argued, but didn't do any good. And he said, when you get through, go down and get on the bus, 2 at a time. Don't say a word to anybody. The people here have found out you're pulling out of the tournament. So it's probably going to be a crowd down there, you know, hollering at you. So my roommate and I, who was Mike McRaney, who later stayed in the service and became a general, and Mike and I got on the bus, and the guy got behind us, a reporter, and said, you know, what they're saying about you boys, he said, I'm from the South and understand it. And he said, what they're saying about you boys is you're afraid to play against this black ball player. Well, that was ridiculous because we'd already played against about 2 teams that had black ball players on it. So we didn't say a word, but he did something to one of the assistant coaches, and he took a swing at him. And
the assistant coach took a swing?
At the reporter.
Yeah.
And after that happened, the police came in and took the driver's license and the keys away from the bus driver and just let us sit there.
Oh my
and
goodness.
By that time, the crowd was gathering and rocking the bus and throwing rocks at us. And, you know, we 18, 19, 20-year-old kids not knowing what the heck was going on or what.
And you didn't even choose not to play.
No.
You wanted to play. Yeah.
We all wanted to play. So anyhow, you know, that kind of changed my thinking, having grown up in a segregated South. Later on, you know, why couldn't we play against this guy just because he had black skin? So of course, when I got in public office, that obviously helped my thinking because I went into office, you know, kind of in the height of the civil rights problems and violence.
Yeah, we're going to get to that a little bit later.
But anyhow, that did change my opinion a whole lot about black and white. Because I grew up with black kids, and you know, we spent the night together in each other's houses and didn't pay any attention to any of that kind of stuff. But at a certain age, like 12, our parents and their parents made us separate. And, you know, then all of a sudden they had to start calling me Mister, which kind of confused you. And in fact, years later, when in office and we went after the movie industry pretty good, I met Alex Haley, who became a good friend of mine. He wrote Roots, as you probably remember. Yep. And Alex, with Norman Lear, who did All in the Family, wanted to do a series in Natchez about white black kids growing up together and having to separate at that time. But before Alex could do that movie, he came here 4 or 5 times. He died with a heart attack. But again, going back,
you think that would have happened? You think that would have?
Yeah, Alex wanted to because his dad had taught it at Alcorn, and so he was very familiar with this area.
Yeah,
and he definitely liked Natchez, and he definitely wanted to do that movie. And he had a guy named Stan Margulies who had produced Roots, came down here with him to get everything kind of lined up. But
that's interesting.
Well, Alex was an interesting person because he was in the Coast Guard, and he could do his writing primarily on ships because he could concentrate. But he also did, he did the biography on Malcolm X, and he actually wrote for Playboy magazine. So he had quite a varied
wide range.
Yeah, and a great guy. And when he came, I had an antebellum home at that time called the Byrne, B-U-R-N. Mine is B-Y-R-N-E, and the Byrne means the brook in Scottish, so it's kind of a play on names. But every time Alex came, he stayed with us at the Byrne. And actually, my next door neighbor was Alice Walworth Graham, and the Walworths had built the Byrne. And Ms. Walworth Graham, actually, was a writer also, and they both had been represented by the same publishing company. And Ms. Walworth was required reading when Ms. Graham, I keep saying Walworth, but Ms. Graham was required reading when I was in high school. So they had a pretty good meeting together.
So let's talk a little bit about when you left Mississippi State, you mentioned earlier, so you came straight back to the Miss Lou?
I came back. My family had H.F. Byrne department store on Franklin, H.F. Byrne Company department store on Franklin Street. My daddy had died by that time. My two uncles were still living, and but my daddy had always told me, he said, "Don't go into retail unless you have to. The store will be here when you get a chance," which of course eventually turned out not to be true. But my mother was working there, and I went to work for Tom L. Ketching's company. It was a printing and office supply place, and worked with them for a while. And then the guy that had worked there had gone to work for an insurance company called Federated Mutual, and he got a promotion and recommended me to take his place at Federated Mutual. So I covered 13 counties at that time, but traveling wasn't for me. And eventually, through some friends, I went to work for the Chamber of Commerce.
Here in Natchez?
Here in Natchez,
Okay.
Natchez Adams County Chamber of Commerce. We had what we call a manager in those days, they call a president now, named Warren Farmer. But he was brought here from Jackson to go after industry, and not so much working with the retail people, the downtown people, the mall people, whatever it is. So they decided that they would hire somebody else to do that part and let him do the industrial development. But he was still my boss. But basically, I became the manager of the Chamber of Commerce. And one of the best things that happened to me was that the chamber couldn't afford two people. So the city and the county went together and put some money up and actually paid my salary. And the first time I got my paycheck, they'd taken out retirement on me. Because I was probably about 25 years old. I said, I don't need any retirement. You're taking away my money. So they upped me to clear what they told me I was going to clear, which was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me, because in later years, I got the public retirement. So it certainly did help me in the long run. I loved working for the Chamber of Commerce. It was an awful lot of fun. But there was a man named Tom Reed who was on the Board of Aldermen. And I had known Mr. Reed, of course, all my life. And he had kind of the same kind of background that I had working for the Chamber of Commerce. He had also been a state legislator in the House. And he remarried. And in those days, and still, you have to live in the ward. So he remarried and was going to move out of the ward. So he came to me and asked me about running. And I said, well, Mr. Reed, I have no desire to be in politics. And he said, well, I'll help you. And he said, on top of that, it pays $300 a month. And I was making $400 a month. And I said, wait a minute, that's not a bad idea. Not realizing at the time that civil rights had just gotten started, because this was 1966. And as we got into it, Mr. Reed was going to help me. And then his son's best friend and a friend of mine named Bernard Wood was chairman of the Adams County Republican Party. And he decided to run too, and this is Ward 4. And his dad had been alderman in Ward 4. So anyhow, as we got into it, then Mr. Reed said, I've got to back out. He said, I can't go against my son's best friend. So I was just kind of hanging there. And some of the old-time politicians, remarkably, said, people don't realize it, but the black vote is just coming into being, and it's going to be quite a power. And they said, do you have any objection to speaking to the black churches? So that goes back to Mississippi State and playing against black ball players. And white politicians did not go to black churches in those days. So I said, no, I don't have any objections whatsoever. So I did go to the black churches and started speaking. Of course, the Klan threw out papers on me that I was going to the black churches. And but at that time, the form of government that we had, prior to that, when I was with the Chamber of Commerce, we had 12 aldermen, 2 from each ward.
Wow.
12 aldermen and the mayor, and alternated, but they ran every 2 years. So we changed the form of government, and Mr. John Nasser was mayor actually for 6 years when we changed the situation. But at that time, you lived in the ward, but you ran citywide, which is probably still a good idea. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, it got changed later. So when I was running, the first ward that came in was my home ward, but it was also Bernard's home ward, obviously, but his dad's home ward, and I lost it. And I'm thinking, oh hell, what have I done now? I'm going to lose my job. Everything's going to go bad for me. The next two that came in, we kind of split it. The two black wards came in, and I won by about 1,000 votes. And so that, the blacks helped elect me, there's no doubt about it. And because the whites kind of split. But and later, when I ran in '68, I ended up winning that race against Mr. Nasser.
And that was for mayor?
Mayor.
That was. Is that when you became mayor in 1968?
1968. I served on the Board of Aldermen 2 years, unexpired term, 66 to 68. And like I said, you lived in the ward, but you ran citywide. So I did a citywide campaign. The thing about going in office on the Board of Aldermen, like I said, not realizing that was in the height of the civil rights problems, and nobody knew what to do because there was no background on how to handle the situation. We had the boycott that Charles Edwards had put on the downtown merchants, quite successful. It hurt H.F. Byrne Company, among others. But it was the most successful boycott, I think, that they've ever had in the civil rights era.
What year was this?
66. All of that was going on at the time. And Mr. Nasser, whom I liked very much and had supported, the poor man had grocery stores. And every time he made a decision as mayor, either the whites boycotted him, the Klan primarily, or the NAACP. So every decision the poor man made, somebody was going to boycott him. And it kind of made him ineffective, even though he tried hard. He had given lots of money in the past to black churches and was very active as a civic man, giving money all the way. And but that broke him. It actually broke Mr. Nasser. And so I ran because they couldn't hurt me because I didn't have any business. And I won that election by 252 votes.
What made you want to run for mayor?
I didn't. Some people that were kind of active in the area could tell that kind of needed a younger person in there that could work with the black situation and the boycotts and the changing in race relations. And they kind of talked me into it.
So if you don't mind me asking, what age were you then?
I got elected when I was 31 and took office when I was 32.
Wow, so you were a very young man.
I had an election in May, but my birthday's in May. In fact, I got one coming up May 18th. And anyhow, I got elected and took office at 32.
Man, that's a pretty young age to have all of that thrown at you, sort of, be trying to manage all of that.
Ironically, and a lot of people don't remember this at all, Ronnie, that in June of 1968, and I didn't take office until July, we had a riot in downtown Natchez, primarily on what was Pine Street, now Martin Luther King, all out St. Catherine Street. The word had gotten out in some of the black joints that what they got going on now, a white cop had killed a black man. Well, none of that was true, but people drinking, and they poured out onto the streets and went down St. Catherine Street, burning and throwing rocks and shootings and everything. Nobody got killed, thank goodness. So I was actually at my house camp on Lake St. John and had been elected mayor, but obviously had not taken office, but still on the Board of Aldermen. And they came and got me. Carl Wilson, who was on the board, came and got me because I didn't have police radio or phone up there or anything, and said, you got to go back to Natchez because we're under martial law. We had 375 highway patrolmen come in here, so I jumped in the car with Hall. Of course, hadn't shaved, had on shorts. We came across the bridge, and they had machine guns on us when we came across the bridge.
They being
the Highway Patrol.
Okay.
In state police or whatever you want to call them. We call them Highway Patrol. And so they had guns on us, and Hall introduced me as the newly elected mayor of Natchez, and I think they looked at me in shorts and beard and said, "Yeah, I'm sure you are."
So let's talk a little bit about your relationship as the years went along with race relations and everything over your 20-year tenure. What did you see sort of over that period?
Well, obviously, a rise in the black population of a middle class, because prior to that, you either had wealthy blacks or extremely poor blacks, and some school teachers in between. And but by opening up the lines of communications, we were able to accomplish quite a bit as far as keeping the lid on any situations that might pop up, because you still had the Klan very active. E.L. McDaniel was a Grand Dragon for the White Knights of the Klan in Mississippi, and he's from Natchez, and the guy that I grew up with.
Yeah.
And in fact, he called E.L. McDaniel. I didn't know who E.L. McDaniel was until they marched down the street one day with the hoods up. I said, "That's Eddie. What the devil's he doing in there?" So, but then the Klan was active up to a point. And then after we kind of went in office, and the FBI came in here after Mississippi burning in Neshoba County, and we had like 32 FBI agents in here at one time, and they started publishing the names of people who were in the Klan in the paper, so a lot of them got out. So then Eddie McDaniel started one called the Citizens for Education in Adams County. And so it was just an offshoot from the Klan is what it was. They didn't have the silly robes on anymore. But, the same thing. So we had trouble with that group for a while. They wanted, because they obviously didn't like me. First of all, because I got the black vote. Secondly, because I was Catholic. The Klan didn't like Catholics either. So
two strikes against you. Huh?
Yeah, at least two.
At least two. Yeah.
But anyhow, I had played sandlot football with Eddie, E.L. McDaniel, and everything. And so we obviously knew each other pretty well up to a point. But anyhow, it kind of calmed down because we just didn't pay any attention to them. They were a bunch of cowards. They always had to have a group with them before they could beat up anybody or scare anybody and look silly in those uniforms, robes. So, Klan and I didn't get along too well.
Yeah.
But it kind of broke them up. I'm sure there's still some hatred always, regardless of what it is. But I think by allowing us to be able to open up the lines of communications, that it certainly kept a lid on whatever else might have happened somewhere else.
And you think it sounds like that you did a good job by understanding at an early age that communication was the key, and that you weren't going to go in and tell everybody this and that. And it sounds like that you had enough wisdom at that age to listen to a lot of different people.
Well, I think my background with the Chamber of Commerce helped a whole lot, because we had one guy that I admired very much by the name of Grady Sargent, who was head of the Bell South Central Bell, whatever we called it in those days. And he gave me a bit of advice that stuck with me for all my life. He said, the whole problem with the world is communications. He said, if you can finally sit down and talk to somebody, you can usually work it out. And he was absolutely right.
Yeah.
So the problem was, prior to that, the whites and the blacks didn't want to sit down together. The blacks did. The whites didn't want to sit down with them. And, when you finally get down and sit down and start talking to people, you realize that maybe your differences aren't quite as far apart as you think they are.
Yeah.
So I think that piece of advice helped me a whole lot.
Yeah, that's great advice. I mean, I've always, I always tell people that I think that we're a lot, not just black or white, but all over the planet.
Yeah.
We're a lot more similar than we are different. We all want the same basic things. We want our families to be safe. We want opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, we're a lot more similarities with everybody on the planet than there are differences.
Right. Well, actually, I think one of the things that happened was 1972, after the 4-year term, and we obviously won again, but George West Sr. came on the board, first black since Reconstruction. And still, again, it was a citywide election, and the majority was white. But they voted to put him in because he was such a good man.
Yeah.
So the times had changed drastically as we went along, and we were all having to learn how to work in this new system. And we just had some good people that worked with each other, thank goodness.
Yeah. What looking back over your 20 years, what are some of your proudest accomplishments?
Number one, staying alive in office.
And you're joking, but sort of serious.
Well, actually, I lived on at 914 State Street, which is actually now called the Mayor's House. It's owned by Present Mayor Dan Gibson and is a bed and breakfast. Before he went into office, he actually named it because I had lived there. But I didn't have a place to park. I just parked kind of on the street. I could go over the sidewalk and be next to the house. But back in those days, J.T. Robinson was the chief of police, and give him an awful lot of credit. In my opinion, J.T. knew the Cluckers, he knew all of them, and he knew the blacks, and he was able, and knew Charles Evers. They were friends. He was able to kind of keep things under control too. But I didn't know this until later, but at nighttime, and JT couldn't trust all his police officers because some of them were in the Klan. He would come at nighttime and put a piece of Scotch tape underneath my hood, and then the next morning he'd go by and check it, make sure that it hadn't been popped and that somebody had planted a bomb there.
Oh my goodness!
So it was kind of scary. So
and you didn't know that until later.
Not till later. Yeah. I guess I wouldn't have been so brave. But anyhow, I think one of the greatest things that we were able to accomplish, again, was peace within the race. I think another thing that I'm very proud of course, was a street program that we actually went through the grounds of some of the antebellum homes and opened up streets through Natchez, Main Street being one of them, George F. West Boulevard and others. But we also started trying to get particularly the minorities in decent housing. So we started a program of condemning houses, and you could fix them up or they were going to come down. And that led to some Section 8 housing that we did, but we didn't put them on top of each other. We didn't make them 2 stories. They were spread out just like it'd be a normal home. But when we came up with the idea of condemning houses or getting them up to shape, as I said earlier, my father was dead, but my mother actually owned some black property in what we call Wall Street Alley. And outside commodes, outside privies, as you'd call them, I guess, hardly any running water, typical of what they did. And in order to make it work, I knew the first thing people were going to say if we condemned the house was, "What about your mother's?" Mm-hmm. So Kenneth Graves had taken over in the housing department there. And I think he thought I was a typical politician speaking out of both sides of my mouth. When I told him to condemn my mother's property first, he wouldn't go do it. So finally I had to call him in the office. And I said, "Now you go down there and put red signs on every one of her houses." I said, "Kenneth, I've talked to her. She knows about it. Now go do it." And he did. And boy, after that, he went wild. He got a bunch of them. And in fact, we got a couple of historic houses. And based on that, the newspaper, which was taken over by the Boones at that time, we got the preservation ordinance came about because of that. So you can't just go in and condemn houses that have some historical value. But we lost a few of them because of our enthusiasm to do that. But I think putting people into housing and giving them a decent place to live, and that had a whole lot to do with what I felt was probably that race relations, housing. It's hard to pinpoint any one thing. Of course, the disappointment to me was that we didn't have as much industry coming in as I'd liked. And about that time, Armstrong was beginning to go down. We had the 50th anniversary of Armstrong, a big event. And about 2 weeks later, they were getting ready to sell the building, sell the whole thing. But that would probably been my biggest disappointment. But again, I think just being able to work together with people and trying to do the right thing. Of course, the problem is the longer you stay in office, the more decisions you make, the more people you're going to make mad.
Yeah.
Because every time you make a decision, somebody's happy with somebody's mad at you.
Yeah.
And so I enjoyed my 20 years. I still miss the people, even with 34 years later. I still miss them. But I'm glad I'm not around with social media.
Yeah.
It's bad enough back then because you don't have to prove anything. All you have to do is accuse somebody.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, another guest champion that we had in was our mutual buddy Mark Brockway, who did the documentary Mississippi Madam, the story of Nellie Jackson, and he actually mentioned you during our interview, and he said a quote from you. But can we talk a little bit about, I don't want to say your relationship, but your friendship or whatever it was with Nellie Jackson? Can you tell us a little bit about how that?
Yeah, that of course
was.
When I was in office, some of the far right religious people would say, "You're gonna close her up?" I said, "She was in operation before I was born. No, I'm not gonna close her up." And of course, I knew about it. And Nellie made her fortune in World War II when Camp Van Dorn down at Centerville had 40,000 men down there going to war, knowing they probably going to get killed. But because I knew all about Nellie Jackson. But when I took office, the doctor was Tom Gandy, Dr. Tom Gandy, and he was my doctor too. And she was concerned because she was smart enough to try to stay on the right side of whoever was in office, of course, and she liked Mr. Nasser. But Dr. Gandy told us that you won't have any trouble out of Tony. He said, he grew up here, he knows about it. He's not going to try to close you down or anything. And I never did. And then my former wife had a restaurant here called the Sidetrack in the old depot down on the bluff that they're trying to do something with now. And I happened to be down there one night with a group that was actually here with Southern Living Magazine. And she told me, she said, "There's a reporter up here who wants to talk to you." And I said, "Well, if you don't mind, send him a drink and I'll go over and talk to him when I get through down here." So I went in and sat down next to him. And he said, "Mayor Byrne, I want to be up front with you." He said, "I'm in here doing a story on Nellie Jackson." He said, "What do you think about it?" Well, he said, first of all, he said, "Do you know she exists?" And I said, "Certainly I know she exists. Why?" He said, "Well, what do you think about it?" And I said, "Well, I think it ought to be legalized. Where do you want to go from there?" So it kind of took the starch out of him. But he did a expose and went down under the hill to the saloon and got comments from different people down there. And Super Bowl Sunday, I would go out to my friend's house, Joe Fortunato, who played 13 years with the Chicago Bears and at Mississippi State. And he got the Times-Picayune out of New Orleans. And it wasn't on the front page, but it was on the back page of the front section, a picture of Nellie Jackson's house. And it had in there, "Nellie Jackson's the best little blank blank in Mississippi." And of course, throughout there, they quoted me extensively. And, we all had a big laugh about it and didn't pay any attention to it. Well, about 2 weeks later at one of the board meetings, there was a whole bunch of people there that I didn't know. Well, not a bunch, it was about 6 or 8. I didn't know who they were. And we allowed people to talk, just anybody want to say anything. and they got up and wanted to pray over me, and because of Nellie Jackson. And finally, they were going on, and finally, I looked around and realized, I said, I don't know any of them. And so somebody told me, said they're from Vidalia. And so there's a bunch of, why they wanted to come over here and get on me, because, I guess because of religion, I don't know. So I finally just said thank you and shut them down. But the ironic thing, Ronnie, was that same week I had to make a speech to the Ministerial Alliance here in Natchez. And thank goodness that our local priest was the chairman of it. But when I went there, they kind of joked about it. They were pretty broad-minded in most cases. In fact, one of the local Methodist ministers at the time said, I'm not sure that I know this exists. He said, I think we ought to get a committee together and go investigate it. And he said, I'd like to be chairman. So it was kind of fun. But one of the ironic stories about Nellie was I had a bed and breakfast, again called at the Byrne. And on the weekends, and this was on a Saturday, whatever I wore the night before, wherever we went, I'd put it on real quick, go downstairs and say hello to the guests and chat with them at breakfast, and then later go back up and change clothes and so forth. But I'd been somewhere, and by that time, Nellie Jackson had her T-shirts out. And it says, follow me to Nellie's. And of course, I had one. Nellie had given me. And so I had it on. And the guy at the end of the table, young guy, and said, Mayor Byrne, I want to ask you about that T-shirt. And I looked around, there were no children, so I told him the whole story about Nellie Jackson. Well, he started dying laughing. He said, my girlfriend at the end of the table said, her name's Nellie. He said, I've got to have one of those shirts. So I said, okay, we'll go. I'll call her, you can go. So I called Nellie, and she said, send him on up. So we did. Well, my son-in-law, Adolph Joanitis, was here from Fort Wayne, Indiana, but he's from Grand Rapids. And he said, Tony, I'd like to get one of those T-shirts, too, to take to, we've got a priest that's retiring. He said, well, I'd like to play a joke on him. And I said, okay. So he said, can we go up there? So I called Nellie and tell him I'm coming. We got up there. A young couple was backing out as we got there. So we parked, on the side of Nellie's and went in. There's a young girl, pretty girl there, everything hanging out. And Adolph's younger than I am, and he's got this accent from being from the north. And she asked him, said, where are you from? He said, Grand Rapids. She said, look, I'll be up in that part of the country in November. Like, let me give you my card so you can call me. So anyhow, we got out of there and went back to the Byrne. There had been 4 ladies, actually 5, sitting at the table, a mother, grandmother, and granddaughter. And they had broken down out front. So I offered to help, which I couldn't help because I'm not very good at mechanics. But anyhow, they said they were waiting for the husband to come from Baton Rouge. He could work on the Mercedes that they had. And I said, well, why don't you ladies go back in the Byrne and just sit down till he gets here? And they said, well, we've checked out. And I said, it doesn't make any difference. Just go back in. They said, I'll tell you what we'd rather do. And I said, what's that? They said, we'd rather go to Nellie Jackson's and get some T-shirts. so I called Nellie and tell her we're coming.
Coming back.
And of course, I walked in, and I had 3 women with me. And Nellie looked at me and she said, Mayor Byrne, I never have heard of bringing you on. But anyhow, they got their T-shirts and got out. And ironically, Nellie Jackson's 85th birthday, her husband, and she was married to a white man towards the end, her husband called me and was putting a little BS on me, I know, but they said, you're out of office now. Nellie's kind of depressed because you're not there, and wondered if you mind taking her out to eat on her birthday. I said, no, I'll be glad to. Well, my former wife said, no, we're going to have her over here at the Byrne, because we served a bed and breakfast, but also nighttime dinners and lunches and so forth. And so we got a group of friends together, Dr. Gandy and his wife, Joan Gandy, who's now a Presbyterian minister, and also Buzz Harper and Dr. Salvo, 4 or 5, maybe 10 people total. And Nellie came, and we were downstairs, and anyhow, doorbell had rung, and the lady we had working with us, Kay McNeil. At the time, we were trying to sell the Byrne, actually, to Dr. Randy Tillman and his wife. And anyhow, she was at the door because we were having a party downstairs. And Ann Tillman was at the door and had her cousin and wanted to show her through the Byrne. So Kay asked me about it, and I said, yeah, but just kind of steer her away from down here a little bit, you know. So she didn't get to steer her down. So Kay came in to me and said, Ann Tillman wants to talk to you. And I'm thinking, oh, God, there goes the sale of the Byrne. You know, I'm down here with Nellie Jackson and everything. So I walk outside, and Ann asked me, she said, Tony, is that Nellie Jackson in there? And I said, yeah, it is, Ann. She said, do you mind if I come in? I've never met her. So I said, come on in. So that's the way it was felt about Nellie Jackson in Natchez. And, you know, Nellie would, in those days, the nuns couldn't drive. And Nellie would drive the nuns around wherever they wanted to go, particularly nuns at Holy Family, which is basically the Black Catholic Church. But and Nellie in the civil rights days bailed a lot of them out. She also was very instrumental in helping the FBI because there's a guy named Billy Bob Williams who was an FBI agent here at the time, among others. But they would go up there like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning because, you know, the Cluckers didn't mind going with the black women when they couldn't be seen, type thing. And they would go up there because she had white women too. But anyhow, Billy Bob would go up there and get information about what was happening with the Klan, and because they, you know, they brag on everything they had done, type thing. So she was, and when she died, I went to the funeral at St. Mary. Father O'Connor did this service, and some of the parishioners jumped on him about doing the service for Nellie Jackson, and he blistered them in his sermon the next song about being hypocrites. And of course, Father O'Connor has a classic comment in Mark's video about the Black Book.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, it was just.
She's a fascinating.
Well, it was just an institution that was here that everybody just kind of accepted. And Natchez is a river town. We had gambling right here on Main Street, you know, 2 doors, 3 doors down. Slot machines, crap tables, poker games going on. But it was a river town. Actually, making it legal hurt the city because we got a black market tax. Back in the days when whiskey was illegal, we had package stores around that would deliver to your house and charge it to you and bring you ice and Cokes and 7-Ups in those days, no Sprites, and charge it to you. And then when legalized whiskey came in, they kind of did away with some of that. But Natchez is a river town, and it was wide open. So I grew up just thinking that's what you were supposed to do. Mm-hmm. The thing I missed when I went to Mississippi State, being dry, was no beer signs. So you had to drive 7 miles to get a beer.
Yeah. Oh man, that's funny. She's a fascinating person for sure. I wish that I would have had an opportunity to meet her.
Well, she was, like I say, very, very well known. She loved baseball, and she loves the St. Louis Cardinals particularly. She would get on the train and go to the World Series, go to ball games up there. And she was, like I say, fascinating to be around. And, you know, I was happy to call her a friend because she was such an institution.
Yeah, you hear that a lot. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who say the same thing.
And a lot of people still want to write books on it. And, you know, some of the garden club ladies have brought people by my office to talk to them about Nellie Jackson. And, you know, here's the garden club people talking about Nellie just like she's there. So what about it?
Why don't you tell us, I saw a video that Dustin and the city did about Tripod, the
city's kitty.
The city's kitty. Why don't you tell us quickly about how that came to be?
Well, actually, I was coming back from California because we sought the movie industry. In fact, the last 11 years we were in office, we had 13 movies here. And so I was coming back from California, and I'm sure it was USA Today, and I was reading about the headlines of the city has adopted a kitty. And I looked and they said Natchez. And I said, oh, I don't know what that is. And so when I got back, the cat had just shown up at City Hall and had 3 legs. The front paw was missing. And Bill Fields, who was a city engineer, was looking for some new equipment. And so seeing the 3-legged cat, he just named it Tripod. And by the time I got back, of course, he was enhanced in City Hall with the ladies. They weren't going to let Tripod get out of there. And so we were feeding, they were feeding Tripod everything, chicken bones, whatever it might, and found out it didn't have any teeth.
Oh my goodness.
So we started a city's kitty to get Tripod some dentures. And of course, the talk shows around the country, primarily radio in those days, started calling in, and of course we carried on like, yeah, we're getting Tripod some dentures. Well, eventually, Tripod would go on Sunday, would go over to First Presbyterian Church and go to church over there and then come back. Well, one of the ladies decided we weren't taking good enough care of Tripod, so they catnapped her. We thought catnapped her, kidnapped her, whatever you want to call it. And so we were all looking for Tripod. And finally, when the lady realized that we wanted Tripod back, she brought Tripod back to City Hall. Well, somewhere along the line, Channel 2 in Baton Rouge heard about it. Well, primarily, I guess, through Leo Honeycutt, who was down there and is a friend of ours, and actually wrote the book on Edwin Edwards, the former governor of Louisiana. Mm-hmm. And they found out it, so they decided to do what they called PM Magazine in those days. So they came and did a segment on Tripod, and PM Magazine was a fill-in for if a TV station ran 10 minutes behind or they needed a 10-minute filler, they would put in something like this. Well, we could always tell when Tripod's film had been shown around the country because we started getting money and catnip and gifts from Tripod. And when the boats would come in on the river, Tripod would be in my window, in Mayor Gibson's window now, and be in that window, and people would come by and they would see Tripod. They didn't remember the city, but they remembered the cat. And they would come in and want to see Tripod. So he got so popular that we had to we took a picture of Tripod, and then on the back we put 3 paw prints. So people would come in and usually make a donation to help feed Tripod, which we didn't need, but we took. And anyhow, we'd give them a picture. So Tripod actually served a full 4-year term before he died. And Dave Pace, who has Natchez Monument, in that days it was Brookhaven Monument, donated a tombstone to Tripod, showing a picture of Tripod with his paw off. And we buried him in front of City Hall. And recently, Mayor Gibson wanted to know about Tripod because they were all of the impression that it was an outside cat. And they were kind of shocked when they found out that Tripod actually lived in City Hall. And one of the meetings we had, Hall Wilson, who I had mentioned earlier, was on the board, but he was allergic to cats. And Tripod had missed his litter box, I guess, or something. So Hall went upstairs and tried to make a motion to remove Tripod from City Hall. Well, the motion died because of a lack of a second. So Al Granning, who was on the board, made a motion to remove Mr. Wilson from City Hall. And we tell the story, it was a 3-3 vote, and I broke the tie to keep Hall there. And he doesn't like for me to tell this because he was a villain. Actually, we had a picture when PM Magazine showed it on TV. There's a picture of Tripod looking at the picture of Hall Wilson on there and turning his head. I don't like that man.
The feeling was mutual, huh?
Yeah, but actually we had an ice storm one time, and Hall was living downtown at the time, and we couldn't get to City Hall, and he actually came over and fed Tripod. He said he didn't like for me to tell that because he likes being the villain. But he served.
Didn't want to ruin his reputation.
But like I say, Tripod got a 4-year term in.
Yeah.
So it's a cute story,
What
particularly
an interesting
with
story.
a bunch of hard shell politicians being there,
Yeah.
letting this cat take over City Hall.
Oh, goodness. Let's talk about just a couple of the ways that you've seen Natchez change over the years since you grew up to now. What are some ways, for better or worse, that you've seen Natchez evolve?
Well, I would always say better because I love Natchez and highly prejudiced towards it. But growing up, where you kind of walked everywhere, there was no malls, no business outside of downtown. Everything was congested right here in this area in Franklin Street, Commerce. So that obviously has changed. The boycott certainly crippled and just about destroyed downtown. It's made a pretty good comeback, which is a good thing. I grew up with all the big industries here, and Natchez actually was a union town, and it did a great job for the people that were in the union, but hampered us trying to get new industry to move in because the northern manufacturers didn't want to fool with unions. But Natchez was a union town, and we just accepted that. Of course, it's not now because we don't have the big industries. Hopefully, with Mayor Gibson's Natchez renewal program, we'll get some more in here. But that has drastically changed. Obviously, the education system has changed because it was segregated when I was growing up, white and black schools. As they said, the black schools were separate but equal. That was not true at all because they got the whites leftover books. There's no black history in a lot of it. That has changed drastically now. So civil rights has changed Natchez completely. One of the things that has changed, I guess, I was fortunate enough to stay there 20 years. I had five terms. And we have 7 former living mayors now. Right now, seven former living mayors, starting with me, thank goodness. But only one of them, Butch Brown, has served more than one consecutive term. All of them have been one-termers. I hope maybe Mayor Gibson can change that. Butch Brown served 2 consecutive terms, then left for 8 years, I guess, and then came back and served another one. And then Butch's health got bad because he probably would have served another term or 2. But that has certainly changed. Tourism has changed a lot, where the antebellum homes had, pilgrimage time, it was packed with people. And like I say, Mayor Gibson and his board are doing a good job on getting people happy again. And of course, going through COVID hurt a lot, but everybody went through that. But I think the changes that I see in the city government are going, I think, very well. I'm one of Dan Gibson's cheerleaders because I think he's doing a good job. His board is doing a good job.
I think that he's doing a great job right now, and I think that Natchez is moving in the right direction. And I see it. We're here on Main Street, and we're fortunate that we get to. I have a business next door also, a Rise and Shine, and we see tourists come in every week. These boats are coming through.
Oh yeah.
We sort of get the bird's eye view, I guess I would say, of what's happening, and things are moving in the right direction.
Well, Natchez was created as the oldest city on the Mississippi, oldest settlement, I think they want to say, on the Mississippi River. And we were established because of the river, and I think our future is going to be the river. And with all these boats coming in with packed full of people, it's ironic, and it's it's great to see again, because we used to just have the Delta Queen, then the Mississippi Queen came in, and now we've got about 5 or 6 boats coming in, I think, and they're
Quite a few every week.
And we used to get an awful lot of bus tours through here going to New Orleans. Katrina kind of hurt that, but I think they're beginning to come back on that too. And so I again compliment them on going the right direction, and I'm proud to see it and happy to see it, because I'm not leaving Natchez. I love Natchez, and I'm going to stay here.
Well, tell us one more question for you before we let you out of here. What does a day in the life of Tony Byrne look like these days?
So I have retired and spend an awful time, good time with my wife now. But I play tennis about twice a week, and I have a camp on Lake St. John and try to go there. And I still try to stay active, stirring up annexation is another one. I play tennis, and we went before the school board. Henry Harris, who was a former pro out there, we went before the school board and said, since you're building a new high school, we'd like to see you put some tennis courts out there. So I'm sticking my nose into certain places and creating some controversy here and there.
Well,
life is still very good for me. We travel a little bit. I have children, and Annette does too. But hers lives, one of them lives here in Natchez. Actually married to my cousin Bill Byrne, so I introduced Bill as my cousin, stepson-in-law, and all the above. And, then my 2 children, 3 children, because I have a stepdaughter, Pat Joninus, that lives here, and 2 children. Kevin, my son, is in Austin, Texas. Worked for the Susan and for the Dell Foundation, Susan and Michael Dell Foundation, but he's just taken a new position with the Subways Foundation in Florida. And my daughter Christy teaches and has her PhD and teaches at Sanford in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
So we visit around a little bit. But today I stay active with Dan Gibson a little bit here and there. But
I know he enjoys that.
Yeah, but just thankful to be here. I have a birthday coming up in May, and I'll be 86. Like most everybody else, I didn't expect to live this long. My daddy died at 53, so I didn't expect to live. It was kind of like Mickey Mantle said, if I known I was going to live this long, I'd taken better care of myself. But I think I'm in good shape, and like I say, just try to stay active and stay whatever Mayor Gibson's asked me to do, I'll try to do.
Yeah.
But
well, look, I'm not going to keep you all day, but we appreciate you coming in. It's been an honor to sit down with you and hear these stories, and I want to thank everybody watching this. I hope that everybody found it as interesting as I did. We want to thank our partners for making these interviews possible. We want to thank everybody for watching this, all of our viewers, and God bless everybody out there. And as always, have a champion day. Hey guys, Ronnie and Shannon here with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight.
And we're here at our amazing partners, Gregg Veterinary Hospital.
Gregg Veterinary Hospital has been providing comprehensive, reliable, cutting-edge veterinary services to pets in the Miss Lou since 2002.
They welcome pets of all shapes and sizes who are in need of emergency treatment or who require routine medical, surgical, and dental care.
Dr. Gregg and his team offer a long list of services, including in-house laboratory diagnostics, digital x-ray, soft tissue, orthopedic surgery, dental care, extractions, laser surgery, laser therapy, preventative health, and wellness plans.
And if you need grooming and boarding services, they do that too.
So call Gregg Vet today. Hey guys, Ronnie and Shannon here with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight.
And we want to tell you about our amazing partners, Concordia Bank and Trust Company.
There's a reason Concordia Bank has been serving the Miss Lou since 1903. The staff is friendly and professional, and they always invest in the latest technology to best serve you. And remember,
Concordia Bank is on your side. Hey y'all, it's Ronnie and Shannon with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight.
and we want to take a minute to tell you about our awesome partners, Miss Lou Family Dentistry.
They have a professional, friendly staff, and they always have the latest technology to take care of you and your family. Miss Lou Family Dentistry has 3 locations here in the Miss Lou.
So schedule your appointment today to go visit the champion team at Miss Lou Family Dentistry.
Hi, it's Shannon with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight. If you like what we're doing, be sure to follow, like, share, and even comment on all our content. Also, visit MissLouChampions.com to sign up for our newsletter and to receive other information, as well as the opportunity to receive some awesome prizes. Thank you, Miss Lou, for your continued support, and as always, have a champion day. Hey y'all, it's Ronnie and Shannon with Miss Lou Champion Spotlight.
And we want to tell you about our awesome partner, Hicks Distributing Company, also known as Hicks Chicks.
Hicks Chicks is a local, family-owned food distribution company that has been serving the Miss Lou since 1945. You already know they serve all of your favorite restaurants, but did you know that they are also open to the public?
Hicks Chicks has a variety of food products, including delicious heat and eat options like chicken and dumplings, white bean chicken chili, lasagna, and gumbo. They also carry a wide variety of seafood options like shrimp, crabs, tuna steaks, salmon, and catfish.
And don't forget about their delicious burgers that are already pattied up for you, and their amazing dessert options.
So stop by today at 1380 Martin Luther King Jr. Road in Natchez. Hicks Chicks.
Way more than just chicken.